me in the last days. Yeah, yeah. For what is the flesh? Without the spirit, there's no best. Yeah, yeah. We live in the West, where the sins equal death. See, my earthly body doesn't mean nothing. I'll die for it if it means something. In this world, it's just long suffering. He sent his son because he loved me. I'm serious. People out
Hey, what's going on, party people? This will be another video from the Lost in Translation, and I'll be getting into religion, okay, this term religion. So I'm going to try to go slow, but it's a lot going on with this term, and then because of that term, I'll end up getting into other terms, okay? So first things first, let's just see what comes up when we put this word into the search and look at where it comes up in scripture. Okay, so I got religion in here, and we're gonna search the 66. Okay, and then it comes up 5 times. Okay, that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And of the 5 times, it only comes up in 3 writings. Okay, so the book of Acts, Galatians, 2 times in Galatians, 2 times in James. So already, this is very interesting, at least to me, because religion is such a strong concept that has gone out to the world, okay? And it only comes up 5 times in the Bible. That's crazy. And only 3 writings out of 66 writings. So another thing that immediately hit me, of the writings that came up in, only New Testament writings. So again, this is very, very interesting, because when you think about religion, I'm just thinking like, I think most people in general, when they think about religion, you know, I'm in America, okay, so in the Western Hemisphere, you're probably going to think of Christianity. You're going to think of the RCC, the Roman Catholic Church. You're going to think of Judaism. So considering the term Judaism, okay, if we look that up, okay, there are no concordance results for Judaism in the KJV. However, there's 2 in the NKJV, there's 3 in the ESV. Okay, so let's go with the NKJV and see what this says. Okay, both of them in Galatians. So regarding Judaism, again, there's no reference to this term in the Old Testament. Judaism is supposed to represent the Old Testament, and it never comes up in the Old Testament. That's crazy. Okay? And it comes up in the New Testament, and only in 1 writing. Very, very, very interesting, right? So the reason I'm bringing these things up is to show, I'm going to continue to go deeper into the term religion in just a minute, but I just want to really get this point across, that this term religion, okay, is not scriptural. It's not based in the mindset of the Hebrews, specifically the Hebrews that were writing these writings, okay? And we're going to look at that because we're going to break these terms down. Okay, so I'm going back to this term religion that comes up. Oh, this is interesting. So if we go back to that Judaism, right, it's actually Galatians 1:13 and 1:14, which comes up as religion in the KJV, but in the NKJV, it's coined or transliterated to Judaism instead of religion. So just something interesting that whatever this term is that they're using, some of the translations associate it as synonymous between religion and Judaism. Okay, so just interesting to note. And then let's get into, I'm just going to go with this one first from Acts. Okay, and this is Acts 26. And then here's the term. So I'm going to look up G2356. Okay, and here we see biblical usage, religious worship. Okay, the root of the understanding of this term is worship. And let's take a look at these examples here that they have of it, and we'll just replace it with the term and see how it reads. Okay, so Acts 26:5, which knew me from the beginning, if they would testify that after the most straightest sect of our worship, I lived a Pharisee. Okay, that makes sense, right? In Colossians, they slipped up and actually told you the meaning. So let's see, it says, let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility and worship of angels, intruding into those things which he hath not seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind. Okay, so I guess they couldn't get around it here. They slipped up and told you the truth. Okay, so James 1:26, if any man among you seem to be religious, okay, and bridleth not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's worship is vain. Now, if we go back, we see that there was discipline that's associated to this term. So a very passionate worship, zeal, okay? And that's why in other places you'll see Paul talking about this in Acts and then in some of his other writings. But I'm mentioning that because if we bring that here, if any man among you seem to be zealous and bridleth not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's worship, his zealous worship, is vain. Okay? Pure worship and undefiled before Yah and the Father is this: to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. Okay, so we see that here religion is really worship, considering that it was Israelites that wrote these writings, right? So I think Acts was written by Luke, Colossians is Paul, and then James is James, right? So all these are Israelites, and they're writing about these things. So it's already understood that when they say worship, they're talking about the way Hebrews worship. And obviously they were monotheistic people, are a monotheistic people, all right? They're specifically talking about the way they interact with their God. Okay, that's what should be associated with worship. Okay, and if you understood that instead of this term religion, then it makes sense because you see zealous worship of their God and their rebellion against him all throughout the scripts, regardless of the Old Testament and New Testament, right? So in that, when you look at it that way, it's cohesive, as it should be, because the truth, okay, pure truth, is consistent. Okay, so let's take a look back at Judaism. So Galatians 1:13, 1:14. Galatians 1:13, for you have heard of my former conduct in Judaism, how I persecuted the church of Yah beyond measure and tried to destroy it. Okay, so that's Galatians 1:13, and that's in the NKJV. So then we'll go back to the KJV. Okay, so here is the term, Jews' religion. Okay, that's what's being transliterated to Judaism in the NKJV. And that's G2454. So if we look at this, the Jewish faith and worship. Okay, so again, it's the root term is really meaning worship. And let's take a look at it again. Galatians 1:13. For ye have heard of my conversation in time past in the Hebrew worship or the Yahudim worship, how that beyond measure I persecuted the church of Yah and wasted it. Okay, and then the very next verse, and profited in the Yahudim worship above many my equals in mine own nation, being more exceedingly zealous. See what I'm talking about? When worship comes up, especially the Hebrew worship, it's a lot of times it's associated or synonymous with zeal. Okay, and that has a lot to do with the same concept that we see from Yahusha. Okay, when Yahusha says, you must love Yah with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and all your strength. Okay, that concept is summed up as zeal. You must be zealous in your worship to the God of the Hebrews. Okay, so actually it says here, view Old Testament results in the Greek concordance. That's interesting. So I'm just going to click on that and see what comes up. Okay, it says 2 Maccabees 2:21. So I guess technically that could be considered the Old Testament as well. It's before Yahusha was born on earth. So let's take a look. 2 Maccabees 2. All right, here's 2 Maccabees chapter 2, and then verse 21. And the manifest signs that came from heaven unto those that behaved themselves manfully to their honor for worship. Okay, here it says for Judaism, so that being but a few, they overcame the whole country and chased barbarous multitudes. So interesting just to note, it does come up, I guess, once in the Maccabees and only in 2 Maccabees. So again, it's just very interesting to me because when you say Judaism to people, okay, people are thinking, the old law, the law of Moshe, right? There's not a translated term that transliterates to Judaism that Moshe himself used. That's crazy. One of the main reasons that I started this Lost in Translation series is to show that there are so many religious terms, okay, that we use daily, okay, frequently, that simply do not compute when you go into the biblical writings. When you start reading the Hebrew writings, these terms, they don't associate at all. And people use them all the time. And people are thinking, when like you say Judaism, some people will think of the old prophets, right? The Old Testament. Some people are thinking of the Jewish people, okay? Some people are thinking of the Talmud. It is simply not part of the Hebraic mindset of the prophets themselves. So these terms, when we use terms, when we think in terms that do not compute to the Hebrew writings, you are going to be confused when you start reading Hebrew writings. I hope that made sense. Okay, so if religion, if Judaism, if Christianity, if these terms are not in the Hebraic mindset, what is? Okay, so that was the next question for me, for sure. And when you read scripture, you're reading about covenants, right? You're reading about how people worship and interact with their gods. So just staying with the Hebrews, we see once they come out of the Exodus, once they come out of Mitzrayim, out of ancient Egypt, they immediately are taken and brought into a covenant with their God. He takes them to his mountain and he reveals himself to them. Then he gives them a culture so that they understand how to serve him. That starts in the wilderness, but really he gives them that culture because he already had a land to give them as well, right? So he's constantly telling them, this is how you must come to me when you come into the land that I've already given to you, right? It just took them longer because they're rebellious. But this is also what we see from the other nations around them. Okay, the other nations had their own gods. And with these other gods that the other nations have, they all have their own form of worship to their gods. You still see offerings, right? Even with the Gentiles, okay, in the New Testament. Remember when Paul went to the Gentiles, and then they mistaken him and someone with him for their own gods. And then they were, I think they were about to offer offerings to their gods for that. Okay, so it comes up in Acts 14. So 14 verse 1, it says, "Now it happened in Iconium that they went together to the synagogue of the Yahudim, and so spoke that a great multitude both of the Yahudim and of the Greeks believed. But the unbelieving Yahudim stirred up the Gentiles and poisoned their minds against the brethren." I just want to note this, okay? When it says the unbelieving Yahudim, they're talking about the Israelite Jews at that time that did not believe Yahusha is Mashiach. Okay? They believed in the Most High. They believed in their God, but they did not believe in his salvation, which is highly dangerous, okay? The most important question anyone that has ever lived on this earth, regardless of lineage, the most important question that you will answer is, who is Yahusha? Okay? That said, though, I just want to mention this because when again, since we're on, lost in translation, right? This term unbelieving, when we think about unbelievers, or usually when this is used with Christians, okay, they're talking about people that don't believe in the Most High at all. And that isn't just not something that you see in the scripts. Okay, everybody believed in a God. They just believed that their gods were the Most High. Okay, and then the true Most High, Yah, stepped in, and everyone understood it's the God of the Hebrews. Okay, so anyway, but the unbelieving Yahudim stirred up the Gentiles and poisoned their minds against the brethren. Therefore they stayed there a long time, speaking boldly in the Adonai, who was bearing witness to the word of his grace, granting signs and wonders to be done by their hands. Okay, so they were full of power as they brought the gospel. But the multitude of the city was divided. Part sided with the Yahudim and part with the apostles. And when a violent attempt was made by both the Gentiles and Yahudim with their rulers to abuse and stone them, they became aware of it and fled to Lystra and Derbe, cities of Lycaonia, and to the surrounding region. And they were preaching the gospel there. Verse 8 here, "And in Lystra a certain man without strength in his feet was sitting, a cripple from his mother's womb, who had never walked. This man heard Paul speaking. Paul, observing him intently and seeing that he had faith to be healed, said with a loud voice, 'Stand up straight on your feet.' And he leaped and walked. Now when the people saw what Paul had done, they raised their voices, saying in the Lycaonian language, 'The Elohim, the gods, have come down to us in the likeness of men.' And Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul Hermes, because he was the chief speaker." Okay, so they saw the miracles of Yah and still mistaken this for their own gods. But all that to say, everybody believed in the hidden realm. They had a very strong understanding of the hidden worlds, okay, that we cannot see. So even this term of the unbelievers, okay, and that term is thrown around a lot, even that has changed in definition over these thousands of years. So again, typically I don't use these terms like this. I don't use the term religion. I try not to use terms like Judaism, like Christianity, like Catholicism, unless I'm actually talking about those religions, okay? Because they are not scriptural. So when I'm doing studies, when I'm talking, I'm focused on kingdom talk. Okay? And these terms do not come up and do not associate with scripture, and therefore the more you think in these terms, the more you think in terms of religion, the more confused you will be when you read the Bible. And certainly when you read, the hidden books like the Apocrypha and things like that. These terms are dangerous, okay? That's what I'm saying. These terms are dangerous to think in because they keep you from understanding of Yah. So I hope that made sense. All praises to the Most High Yah and to the Lion of Yahudah. Peace and love, fam.